we spent our last couple of classes talking about the introduction of our Sefer, Inyan Shel Mashiach. And we talked about what the Sefer was about, the structure of the Sefer, and what we're really going to be seeing in terms of the sources and which are the people that we are going to rely upon when we are learning. So today we are going to begin Perek Rishon, the first chapter of the Sefer Inyan Shel Mashiach. And in this first chapter, of course, it's called Inyan Shel Mashiach. That's the name of this section. And here we're going to have a Skirat Hashitas Hashanis B'Mashmalsim Shel Yemaitz Mashiach. So we will need to understand first and foremost is, what are the different views on this terminology, Yemaitz Mashiach? So we talked about Yemaitz Mashiach and what that's going to be. We find, as we saw in our introduction, that the Rambam himself in different places talks about the future in different ways. So we have to recognize is these different views about Yemaitz Mashiach, where do they stem from? Okay? And how can we actually clearly understand those different views? And that's what we're going to see tonight. We're going to start this, and this will take us a couple of sessions to actually go through completely. So let's begin. Yemaitz Mashiach v'hagula ha'shleima he sugya shleima v'ikaris b'tarasein. As we mentioned before, this whole idea of Yemaitz Mashiach that we're all waiting for, that we wish for, the days of Mashiach, the Geula Shleima, the final and complete Geula, is a complete and it's a really a very large and very fundamental concept in inyan in our Torah. Ukechol inyan haTorah yesh by panim. So like everything in Torah, we have level after level after level. There's a dimension, and then there's an inner dimension, and then there's an inner dimension of the inner dimension. So we can always see things on literally on many layers. There's mashmayos gluyos, mashmayos primis aydaytzer. So you have the meaning of something on an external level. You have the meaning of something on a more hidden internal level, and then you have an internal level of the internal level. So we can always keep going deeper and deeper, like with everything in the Torah. Kevan shekach efshar limtzai b'divrei hanavim v'chachamim te'urim shining l'ma'uroi shel Yemaitz Mashiach u'be'urim shining l'mashmo shel bias Mashiach. So because it's like that, we can therefore see, because like with anything in Torah, there are many levels of learning it, right? The shitchistika, the revealed way, the inner way. So we will find amongst the words of the Nevi'im in Nach, amongst our Chachamim, whether we're talking about the Rishonim, or the Achrayim, the Gemara, even, different descriptions about the things that are going to happen during the times of Mashiach. And also different explanations about what this means when we say Mashiach is coming, or the coming of Mashiach, what we're actually talking about. So if you just look at it, again, like with many things, on the surface level, you might say, okay, they're just contradicting each other. One Navi says this, and one Navi says that, the Chachamim say like this, and they're all saying something different, so there must just be differences of opinion about what Mashiach is all about. As we've mentioned before, the truth is, as the Rebbe shows us often, that all of these different levels are not completely separate things that are contradicting each other, but they're different elements that actually complement each other. So we have to actually understand where these different explanations come from so we can see how they complement each other rather than contradict each other. And as we've mentioned in our earlier shiurim, kfiha yisayid hagadol shalimed haRebbe pamim rabbis, as is that basic foundational teaching that the Rebbe taught us, shekashem shashem yisbarach hu echad ha'emes. Just like Hashem is the one and only, the true one, kacha Torah she chachmasay hamiyuchedes ima yisbarach he taras emes v'tara achas. So too, the Torah, which is the chachma, the unique chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is also taras emes. It's a true Torah, and it's Torah achas, is one Torah. There aren't many Torahs. There aren't contradictions within Torah. We actually have to be able to look at it from a higher perspective to actually see how everything really is one thing. L'chein, l'chol habi'urim b'hadeis hashaynos, hamayfiyos ba, yesh tisyachet ki yishtakfu shel oisa emes, mehebeitim shining over ramas shinas. So therefore, when we look at all the explanations or all the different opinions that appear about Yemais Mashiach and Geula, we have to view them as different, literally different viewpoints, different, it's like wearing different glasses, literally, of the same thing, and just looking at that from different viewpoints or from different levels. And that's what it's like when we're talking about our topic right here. All the explanations regarding what we mean when we say the times of Mashiach, there are actually different levels or different points of view, different perspectives of the very same inyan. So what we're going to do now, and of course in this sefer, and particularly in this chapter, what we're going to try to attempt to do here is to summarize and organize all of these different things about Yemais Mashiach, each thing in the right place. We want to be able to understand, to explain the concept of Mashiach. What does that mean on a revealed level? What does that mean on an internal level? Right? What's the insight? So what's the revealed aspect of Yemais Mashiach? What's really going on behind the scenes? And we're going to do this in order, going from like the easiest things to the things that are a little bit harder. Right? We're going to start from the outside and move in, or go from what is easy and then move into the more esoteric or the more difficult to understand. However, in order for us to create this sefer, really, and this thesis as such, and this connection, to make this connection between the nigla, what is revealed, and what is internal, so we want to be able to connect and show how we have the revealed and the inner aspect of the same thing. But in order to do that, we have to recognize what is the revealed aspects and what is the concealed inner aspects. So we first have to understand each one of them in and of themselves. So as their own unit, what does Nicholas say? What does Pnimis Sara say? And then after that, then we can find those common factors between the two. How they connect to one another and how they actually complement another. And therefore, because that's going to be the shita of what we're going to do in the sefer, to organize everything we know, but in a very systematic fashion. So this chapter 1 that we're learning now, so we're going to do in this very first chapter is to get sort of an overview, or you could say a framework of some way of understanding the different views in the words of Chazal when we talk about Bias Mashiach. So once we have this framework and we understand the key viewpoints, we can then go into depth into each one of those viewpoints. So we're going to see, first of all, like we said, the general framework for these viewpoints, the Ketzad Shitas Elu Mischabros Umashlim Zozu, and then we want to be able to see how they connect and complete each other. And what we learn here in our first chapter, we're going to set the foundation here. This will be the foundation for the very elaborate and deeper study that we do in the future chapters. So that's just kind of a little bit of our introduction. And after we do this in-depth study, we will see that based on all opinions, and this is a key thing, we say, what is Yemais Mashiach? So according to all of them, Yemais Mashiach he matzav by bnei Yisrael va'olam kulay magim lasi hashlemis hefsharis. So when we say Yemais Mashiach, we're talking about a time when bnei Yisrael and the world reach their fullest potential. They reach the height of what they could possibly be. That's what we talk about in terms of potential. The world becomes the best world it can possibly be, and we as Yidden become the best people we can possibly be. That's Yemais Mashiach. אך בזה עצמה יש דרכים שיינס להבין מהי באמת שלמות של העולם. So if you might Mashiach, we have that premise. It's about reaching our full potential. But it comes back down to, well, what is that full potential? What is the true? When we say the shleimus of the world, that the world has completed its mission, it's reached its complete state. What is that? And fitting in with what we think shleimus is, that is then going to match the description of what Yemais Mashiach is. Okay? Because if Yemais Mashiach is shleimus of everything, then what we decide what that point is, like what is that goal? What's that destination? So if that goal is different, then Yemais Mashiach is going to look different because Yemais Mashiach is reaching the goal. Okay. So in general, there are three key approaches to what the purpose of this world is. When we say we've made it, we've reached it, we've done what Hashem wanted, what are those things that what could they be? And the general three approaches are as follows. Okay. And this again is the framework for everything we're going to be seeing in the future. The first one. So the first approach is the way the Rambam explains this based on philosophy. Okay, so Chakira, when we say philosophy, that's not Chassidus. Philosophy, remember, is intellect. It's reminiscent of what we've talked about in our previous shiurim. We talked about the idea of a human being and using the seichel and understanding Hashem. So based on the Rambam explanation, according to Chakira, philosophy, Shleimus habriyahi shebnei ha'adim yakiru v'yasigu b'sichlam es kedulasa yisbarach. That's Shleimus. What is Shleimus then? According to philosophy, a human being, we are people with intellect, and a human being reaches his complete potential when the person, the human, recognizes and understands with his seichel, with his intellect, the greatness of Hashem. So for us to fully understand Hashem, that is the point. A second approach is Biur Torani Halachti. You could say the Torah halachic approach to shleimus of the world. Under that category or that heading, Tachlis Abriya, he hiskalas malchusa yisbarach b'chol ha'olam. Here we say the purpose of this world isn't for human beings to understand Hashem with their seichel. The purpose of this world is the revelation of Hashem as king in the world. That's why we're here. How does Hashem's kingdom get revealed in the world? That happens when we, the Yidden, Hashem's subjects, fulfill the mitzvahs. This isn't about understanding Hashem. It's not about intellect. It's actually just the opposite. We nullify our intellect. We don't worry about whether we understand or not. It's more about doing the mitzvahs in a way of accepting the yoke of heaven. Okay? And of course, in this Torah halachic approach, this is reminiscent of what's coming up now with Rosh Hashanah. When we say Hashem is the Melech HaOlam, and we're accepting Ol Malchus Shamayim, and we crown Hashem as our king, that means that we are going to listen to our king. We are crowning him, and we are going to accept his decrees, and we are going to do them. That's the halachic approach. That's number two. And the third key approach is the Bir Chasidi, the Hasidic approach, based on Kabbalah. And what is that? Tachlis Habriya, Hili Yisla Yisbar Dir B'Tachtainim. The purpose of the creation, not for a human being to understand Hashem. It's not just for Hashem to be a king in the world. It's about having Hashem having a dwelling place here on earth. A dir b'tachtanim. That's what the purpose of the world is. Shakadosh Baruch Hu atzmai. Hashem himself, the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We talk about atmos. We're talking about something that is impossible, actually, for us to understand. Kaviyachol. This atmos is as if it's yadur v'yiskala v'chol atmos sekam ba'olam hazeh. So that atmos, it's as if that atmos is living, dwelling, and revealing himself in its full essence here in this physical world. Okay? 3 different approaches. Now, based on these 3 different approaches, then you can understand then there are going to be 3 different ways of saying what is Yemaisa Mashiach. If the tachlis is intellect, then Yemaisa Mashiach is going to have to be connected to that. If the tachlis is about a king, Hashem being a king of the world, then the tachlis has to be something to do with Hashem being a king. And if the tachlis is about a dir b'tachtanim, then it's something different again. So the fizeh, move on. Now we understand. Sheyeshem shloifa alfanim levar mahya mashmas hamiyuchedesh Yemaisa Mashiach. So now we understand, based on this, that there are 3 ways to explain the unique meaning of the days of Mashiach. We said, Yemaisa Mashiach, we said, that's tachlis, that is the world reaching the purpose, its purpose, the reason why it was created. Okay. So what are those 3 things? What is the purpose of creation? So now we have the parallel explanations. Aleph, the first thing, if it's according to Chakira or philosophy, it's about intellect and understanding Hashem. So then, Aleph, Yemaisa Mashiach, Yedias Hashem, Tokif es kol ha'anashis. That means that in the times of Mashiach, what's going to happen? The knowledge of Hashem is going to be for everyone. In other words, human beings with our seichel, we are going to be able to understand. And everybody, all human beings, are going to be able to recognize with their own seichel the greatness of Hashem. And this, of course, is what the Navi says. People are not going to say to each other, you need to know Hashem, because everyone is going to know Hashem. The world will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem. Okay? So if it's about human beings knowing Hashem completely, then Yemaisa Mashiach is a time when everyone will know Hashem. The second one, if it's about Hashem being king, Yemaisa Mashiach then that means that Yemaisa Mashiach is a time when Hashem as the king of the world will be revealed. Then that means it's a time when the whole world will serve Hashem and they will fulfill his commands. And that's the pasuk we have. So it's not just about malar de, it's not knowing Hashem, it's about Hashem being a king. That's what it's about. And if we say it's not only about knowledge, it's not just about melech, it's about adir b'tachtanim, then we get gimel. That Hashem is going to be revealed in this physical world. Like it says, that you no longer will be, your teacher, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, right? In other words, will no longer be hidden from you. You will see your teachers. So now you will literally clearly see Hakadosh Baruch Hu, because if Hashem is dwelling here, that means that he is fully revealed here. We will clearly be able to see Hashem. So we see 3 different things. It's about knowing Hashem completely. That's one. It's about Hashem being a king, and we do all the mitzvahs will be done. Or number 3, Hashem is revealed here. We see the essence. And now we're going to go into more detail on each one of these 3 things. So please, I'd love to hand over to someone else now to take on our first one. Hopefully we'll be able to get through this first one today. So let's talk a little bit more detail about the Tachlis Habriya Yedias Hashem. So we said, if this is based on where do we see that this first explanation, like we said, of the Rambam, when we talked about according to Chakira, that the whole purpose is knowing Hashem, and what that looks like. When we talk about the purpose of creation being to know Hashem. Someone like to please take it away.
Leva, go for it.
Someone who doesn't have screaming children like to take it? we have a sore throat. Liba, would you like to take, please? Liba, you're muted. Liba Strux, if you unmute yourself. No, okay.
I don't mind reading just without the camera.
Go ahead, Mary, please.
Oh, do you want to do the whole paragraph?
Tachlis Habriya, Yedias Hashem.
Yeah. Haramam heid al atzmai shedarka hi lekabetz bein hatayra ubein hamuskal. Kasharama medaber al hamuskal kavanase beikar lechayki hateva v'chachmas hachakira v'haphilosophiya aleha hu medaber besifrei Mara Nevuchim, the Kuranes Memena Mishulavim, the Mekaimes Rabim, Bishar Chiburav, Halchaytayim.
Halachim, yes.
Halachim.
Yes, halachic. Go ahead.
You want me to translate?
Yeah.
Should I leave that over to you? Rifki was just writing that it's nice to hear your voices, even if you don't translate. Okay. The Rambam testifies in himself that his method is to I don't know what you'd say.
It's like
gather,
the gather thing. Yes, to bring
right.
together really Torah and intellectual endeavors. Okay, so we know that the Rambam was a doctor. He was in the sciences. He wrote more in Nevuchim. He was into philosophy, but it really was about showing the connection and showing how they work together.
Thanks. And when the Rambam speaks about that, the sciences or whatever you're referencing, intellectual study, his main intention is referring to the laws of nature and the foundational wisdom and philosophy that he speaks about in Moreh Nevuchim. And those foundations are drawn in many places or lead to many places in a lot of other halachas and compilations of his. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right. Because so we find the Rambam often referring to these ideas, not just in Moreh Nevuchim, but those kind of principles that he deduces from this bringing together of science and Torah end up coming through a number of his other sfarim as well.
Masai haklalas the parish Mishnah. Kaisav Rambam Shab Hispanis B'Matzias Ativis Nera Bor Shehi Ma'arachas Achas Shlema Sheyesh Ba Dargais Zu L'Mayla Mizu Ha Mishar Sais Zu Esu V'Kulon Yachad Miskananas L'Matar V'Shlemas Achas L'Fizeh Mavar Rambam Shetachlas Kolon Avram Sheba Ilam Mishlemusam L'Sharis Es HaAdam V'Tachlas HaAdam V'Shlemasai Hukashar Isaac B'Chachmas B'Chlal U'Vidias L'Kus B'Frat. So in the Rambam's general Hakdama to the Parish Mishnah, the Rambam writes that in contemplating the natural Metzias, we see it very clearly that it's really one entity and there are many levels in it and they are drawn one after the next. And all together, they all come really for one purpose and one united shlemus, one united completion of itself. And according to this, the Rambam explains that the intent of all creations in the world and their completion is to be able to serve man. And the purpose of man and his completion is when he's studying wisdom in general and specifically the knowledge of Hashem.
Right. So basically the Rambam is kind of referring, we talk about like the food chain, right? That everything in the world depends on something else. And that's what the Rambam says. The whole world is really one unit. That's what science talks about in nature and the circle of everything. And everything really serves each other. But really the whole world is here to serve man. And man is here in this world to serve his intellect, right? To learn and to study, and particularly to know Hashem. And then we have a quote here from the Rambam on how he explains this idea.
Should I keep going?
Sure.
Shanisham. דע כי הקדמיים ימחקו חקירה עצומה, שנסקיים אצלם שכל דבר נמצא יצטרך על כל פנים ליאס לתכלס שבשביל להיס למציאוסי. כי לא לדבר ריק נמצאו הנמצאים. כאשר נסקיים להם זה הדין הכללי.
Let's explain as we go on. Let's stop after each sentence.
Okay. Do you want to go for it? You want me to do it?
So we know that the early philosophers, right? They one of the early kind of, I guess you could say, questions of philosophy is, why are we here? Why do we exist? What are we doing here? Yes. So the earliest philosophers would have stood on this point, right? That everything is here for something. There's a reason for it. There's a reason why everything exists, because nothing is here for nothing, right? Things are not here for naught. Everything that is in the world, everything that's been created has a purpose. Okay. And therefore, go ahead.
כאשר נסקיים להם זה הדין הכללי ישכילו לחלק כל הנמצאים לדעת תכלס כל מן המינים הנבראים.
Right. So once we know that rule, that everything has a purpose, then we start dividing up all types of creation. What's their purpose? What are they here for?
אך על דרך כלל יש לדעת שכל הנמצאים שתכלס גלגל הירח נמצאו בשביל האדם לבדו.
Yes, so we can talk about, the species. We say, there's algae, and then there's a fish, and then there's a bigger fish, and then there's, we can go right through everything. But the main point is that everything really that exists in this world it's for man. That's why we're here.
I heard yesterday that in Australia they say algae. Never heard that in my life.
There you go.
Okay. אך על דרך כלל, here, אי אפשר לכל עשב, לכל פרי, לכל מין מבעלי החיים, מן הפילים עד התלם, שלא יהיה בהם תועלת לאדם.
So it's impossible for any blade of grass or any fruit or any type of animal, from the elephants to the worms, that should not have some sort of purpose for man.
כאשר מצאו שתכלס כל אלו העניינים הוא למציאת האדם, הצטרכו לחקר כמה כן, למה נמצא האדם, ומה הייתה כוונת יצירתו, מצאו כי תכליתו פועל אחד ובלבד בשבילו נברא. Okay, I don't know, I keep stopping at the sentences, but it's really much longer. You want me to keep going? והפועל הזה הוא לצייר בנפשי הסיידס המשכלת לדעת האמיתוס, והנכבד שבמושכלס לצייר לנפשי אחדות הקדוש ברוך הוא בכל הנלווה לעניינו מהאלוקיוס, ששאר החכמות אינם אלא להרגל בהם עד יגיע לדעת אלוקי.
Okay, so we have something really powerful here. They say if the philosophers sit and look at the world and say, okay, everything is here to serve man. So they have to say, okay, if that's the case, then why is man here? What are we here for? And what is the conclusion of that is that man, what makes man unique is the fact that we have seichel, we have mind. So therefore, what's the purpose of our creation? That must be just one thing, and that is to be able to understand the secrets, intellectual secrets, to know truth, to seek truth. Man is here to seek truth, okay? And to seek the most honorable of all intellectual endeavors, which is what? To really try to understand this oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and everything, and godliness, all sorts of spirituality, so that all the other wisdom in the world is really just a training ground to bring a person to be able to know God. So intellectual endeavors, we know that, when we're teachers and we teach students, you always start with what's concrete, and then you can move into what's abstract, right? So the concrete is very clear, but when you understand something that's concrete, then you're training your brain to think, you can then move into more abstract things. So here, according to this philosophical approach, everything in the world is for man. Man has a brain. Man is there to use the brain and to be able to understand things as much as possible. And therefore, all the wisdom in the world is just a training ground to teach us how to think and how to understand, so that we can reach that level of the highest level of understanding, which is the level of being able to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, last one.
אם כן, נסבר מכל אשר אמרנו, שהכוונה בבריאת כל מה שיש בשכל העולם, ההוא והנפסד, אינה אלא ההיבה והנפסד, אינה אלא איש שלם, כלו החכמה והמעשה.
So what's then the explanation of everything we've said is that the intention, the purpose of creation and everything that's in it, the present and the past of this world, is just for a person to be complete in his chachma, okay? In his intellectual completion, right? In what he does, but it's all about the intellect. So this, we can see quite powerfully, again, how this comes from that philosophical approach. Okay, someone else like to take over?
Thank you so much, Mary. Anyone else? Really don't be shy, even if you don't translate. Sarah, continue in the meantime. If anyone's then just speak up.
Okay. So the Heavenly Side Zet, based on this foundation of intellect and philosophy, that our purpose is just to know, to use our brains as much as possible. Harambam Marnavuchim, I'm sorry, the Heavenly Side Zet, Mavar Harambam Marnavuchim es Mashmasan Shal Mitzvah Hatara, Shebakulan Yesh to Elis Adam Labriya. So based on this foundation, that really everything in the world is really only for us to know and use our intellect and understand. It's based on that, then the Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam also explains the meaning or the purpose of mitzvahs in all of Torah. That it really, that even the mitzvahs have a benefit, there's some sort of benefit to man and to the creation. Because learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, they distance a person from doing bad things and from bad ideas. So what they do is, by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, they bring us closer to our true complete state and allowing us to do good deeds and to have the right kind of thoughts and the right recognition of or understanding of Hashem and his oneness. So again, in the Moreh Nevuchim, based on the philosophy idea, the Rambam therefore says that even Torah mitzvahs are there to train us and to help us reach the right conclusions in everything that we do. However, because our neshamas are actually enclosed, they're connected to us in a body. Haguf makbil as a sagasa. So the body limits the understanding of the neshama. So even if we say that the whole purpose of man is to really to know Hashem in the most greatest way possible, as long as we are found in a physical body, we are going to be limited because our body is a limited being and therefore it's going to limit us. It's only when the nefesh, the soul, separates from the body after death, it's only at that point that a person can really reach that true understanding of Hashem. And therefore, based on this viewpoint, that is the true pleasure that a person needs to yearn for and to hope for. Any other pleasure that we can have in this world is really considered like hevel, like nothing. But the true pleasure is going to be when we can really understand Hashem, and that can only happen when the neshama is not part of the body anymore. And here was where the Rambam then takes that and says that if the whole purpose is about knowing Hashem, and knowing Hashem can't happen while we're physically in this world, therefore we yearn for that olam haba, for that time in the future when we will be able to know Hashem complete. And here the Rambam fitting in with this viewpoint, the Rambam says explicitly in Hilchos Tshuva. Mushki, want to take on from here?
Oh wait, I didn't realize I was on. Oh, you can hear my baby the whole time. Sorry. Hatayva atzvuna tzadikim. The good that's waiting for tzadikim. Hi chaya olam haba. Is the life of olam haba. V'hi achayim she'ein maves imahem. This is the life that there's no death there. Taiva she'ein imara. It's good that there's no bad along with it. Olam haba ein boy guf v'gvia. Olam haba doesn't have any physical body, I guess, and doesn't have any expiration. Ella nefashas atzadikim bilvad beloigov kamalach yesharis. It's the neshamas of tzadikim alone, without any bodies, like the malachim. Kach amru chamim harishainim. This is what our earlier cham said. Ha'olam haba ein boy loy achila v'loy shsiya v'loy tashmish el tzadikim yoshvim v'it reisehem v'reishehem v'nenin mizav shchina. So in olam haba, there's no physical eating, drinking, or physical pleasure, or I guess intimacy. But tzaddikim sitting just with their crowns on their heads and enjoying from the ziva shchina, from the rays of the shchina. Hari nispar lach she'ein sham guf. I guess it's clarified that there's no body. Not sure what that means. Oh, I guess you can understand if there's no achila and shtia, there's no eating and drinking, there's no guf, there's no body. What does that mean? Enjoying from the ray of Shechina. They're learning and knowing, understanding, and grasping from the emes of the Eibishter. Mash enam yodim v'heim beguf ha'afel hashafel. I don't understand that. Mash enam yodim.
That they
Maybe you
cannot
could
know
translate.
when they're that they cannot know when they are in that very dark and low guf, right? Because the guf, like I feel, the body basically masks and hides, right, or covers over the neshama. So here, according to this, that the good that's hidden, as we said at the beginning, it's tzfuna from suffering, right? The good that's hidden for tzaddik is a chai olam haba. That's a purely spiritual time when the neshamas can bask in this glory and of understanding Hashem.
Yeah. Kacha, comma, David, v'sava chai olam haba. So I'm not sure what kama means. Oh, kama, but kama. I'm not sure what those words mean. But David, I guess, wanted very much the life of Olam Haba. Shneimar lulei hamanti l'oros v'tuv Hashem be'eretz chayim. Halavai, I guess, that I can. I don't know what lulei means, but hamanti. So you waited. You waited.
We're saying this in David Hashem Iri now in Elul.
Yeah.
Right? We both want to be able to see the two Hashem, the Eretz Chayim, Lulei, like only, right? So what would be this Hamana, like this promise, this of coming to fruition, and we should be able to see the good of Hashem in this Eretz Chayim.
Kvar hidiyanu, Chacham Rishonim Tevas Ha'olam Haba Ein Koyach Ba'adam Hasiga Al-Bereh. So the good of Olam Haba, there's no way that a person can grasp it. Al-Bereh, what does that mean?
Completely.
Okay. Ein Yodea Gadla V'Yafia V'Atzma Ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu Levadeh. And they won't know its greatness and beauty and the essence of it aside from Hashem himself.
That's right.
Ein la erech v'dimyon. There's no way to measure it and even imagine it.
That's right.
L'loi damuha hanavim kedei shalai yiftachu isa b'dimyon. So I don't know. Can you help me out with that last one?
That's it. So our Nevi'im, did not talk about it. They didn't give us any images of Olam Haba in order not to minimize it by whatever they're going to describe. Because sometimes when you describe something, you actually lessen what it is because your description is less than, right? Because you can't grasp something and you try to imagine it, you end up imagining it in the wrong way. Okay, so we find that with Chai Olam Haba, aside from this idea that there's no eating and drinking, whatever it is, there's very little, we don't find that the Nevi'im talk about Olam Haba. They give us any description of it because really it's something that we cannot fully understand.
Okay. Should I continue?
If you can, go ahead.
Okay. But Kafisha Rambam of Arsham, like the Rambam explains there, Zoom Mashmosa Shal Schar HaMitzvahs Shevticha Atera, the man Yitavdach V'harach Yamin. So this is the meaning, this is the meaning of when it says Schar Mitzvah, that the Torah promises that the reward for mitzvahs is that it will be good for you and your days will be lengthened. Kavir, I'll probably just finish this. Kavir Chazal Hakavana La'olam Shkulei Taiv. You know what, Sarah? I'll stop.
I'll take over. That's all right. Go to your baby. Okay. So what is it saying? That if this is the case, so the Rambam continues and says, "L'mani tavlach v'harachta yamim." It'll be good for you, and you will have long days. Shekabir Chazal Kavana La'olam Shkulei Taiv. When it says you'll have long days, it'll be good for you and have long days. It's talking about the world where is all good. And the world that is very long, right? That's harach yamin. Shall be divri haram hakavanahi la'olam hanashamas sheish barak einig nitzchi b'la hefsek. So according to this, when the Rambam says the mani tablach ve'arach yamin, that you have the schar of mitzvahs, it will be good for you and you'll have long days, it's not talking about reward in this physical world. It's actually talking about Olam Haba, this world of neshamas. That is going to be a world where there's only good and there's no ra, and a world that has no end. And then, if you have to ask, if that's the case, if the Rambam, according to this view, is saying that our true reward is only in this spiritual place, then what about all the things that the Torah says, all the testimonies about the physical rewards that we get in this world? How do they explain that? So here we see it's explained that the words when we read, if you go in the chuk of the Torah, we find that the Torah says explicitly that we'll get our rain in the proper time. So how would the Rambam explain that? That when the Torah tells us that we're going to have physical rewards for the mitzvahs, that's not the purpose. That's not the end. Okay, that's not the real schar. Any reward, Gashmistic reward that the Torah tells us we will get from doing mitzvahs is really just a means. It's a way to make possible for us to be able to do other mitzvahs. Because if we have the physical rewards, then we are at rest, we have peace, we're settled, and we're able to spend our time then learning and not worrying about parnasa or other physical things. So the any schar in this world is really just to allow us to study more. And the more we study, the more we can spend time learning, then we get closer to that true shleimus that we're waiting for, which is this spiritual world of the neshamas and Olam Haba. And that is where we get the true reward. So the words, like when we say in Elul Dvarim, we have the Karen Kayamis Olam Haba. So we have the capital is there. There's some fruit that we get to eat while we're here. And that fruit is just to enable us the mitzvah, mitzvah, in the sense that when we do the mitzvahs, we have these physical rewards that we get at the time, so that it makes it easier for us to keep doing those mitzvahs, so that eventually we get the tachlis of the reward in the future. Well, and as we see, the Rambam actually explicitly says this. And what does he say? Again, in Hilchos Tshuva, once we know and understand that the real reward for mitzvahs and all the good that we're going to merit to have if we follow the way of Hashem that's written, is really going to be life in the world to come. So the Rambam explicitly asks the question. So what is it all over the Torah where it says, if you will listen to me, then these things will come to you, and if you don't, then these things will happen. And everything else that it says will occur in this physical world, like we just had in our previous Sedra of the week in Parsha Savai, where we talked about things that will happen. So what about all of that? Whether we're going to be satiated or whether they're going to have hunger, whether it's going to be milchama v'shalom, are we going to have war, or are we going to have peace? Is it malchus or shvelos? Is it going to be that we have our own kingdom, or is it that we are underdog, that we're not the kings, we're not the rulers, but we are the underlings? Is it yeshivas ha'aretz or galus? Is it settling in Eretz Yisrael, or is it in exile? V'hatzlachas ma'aseh v'hefsedai. Or is it being successful in what we do, or is it having loss in what we do? Ushar kol divrei habris, and everything else that we just read in the divrei habris that we're talking about, even in this week's parsha of Atam Nitzav, that we have a bris with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and we're going to do what He wants, and Hashem says, and therefore these things will happen. So the Rambam explains, this is what it means. The Torah promises us that if we do the mitzvahs, and we do it with simcha, we do it with joy, and with a good heart, and we work hard and study Torah all the time, then Hashem will remove anything that will stop us from doing that, from learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, which is sickness or hunger or whatever it might be. When we say sickness or war or hunger, so instead, Hashem will give us all the good things that will give us the strength to be able to fulfill Torah better. So we have satiety, in other words, we don't, the opposite of famine, we have peace, we have plenty of parnasa, plenty of silver and gold. So we don't have to worry about anything that our physical bodies need. We'll be able to be free just to sit and learn and do mitzvahs. And again, why? So that we can amass as much time as possible in this physical world to learn and do the mitzvahs in order for what? To merit Olam Haba, to merit a world of the soul. And therefore, based on this, so let's try to get to the end of this part for tonight. So now, according to this, if this is really the tachlis, then we now see how the Rambam, based on this view, describes Yemaisa Mashiach. He describes it as part of the same idea. It's just a way, it's a path, it's an entry point, it's a way, it's of the Yemaisa Mashiach, in this view, is the means to an end. Okay, it's the path to Olam Haba. Oval Shana Sham, and again, how does the Rambam explain this over there? And I'm sorry, and again, when we say over there, we're talking about Halacha Beis, and again, also in Hilchos Mashiach, but in Hilchos Tshuva specifically, and then again in Hilchos Mashiach as well. This is how the Rambam explains it. It's for this reason that all of our prophets and all our Chachamim desired the time of Yemaisa Mashiach. Why? Because we need time where we have rest from all the evil kingdoms, all the evil kings that we have, all the governments who do not allow the Jewish people to sit and learn Torah and do mitzvahs as we should. We'll have peace, we'll be calm, and we'll be able to have a tremendous amount of wisdom. In order so that we will merit the future, the world to come. Because in those days, okay, based on this, so again, based on this philosophical view, what's the Yemaisa Mashiach? It's a time when the knowledge of Hashem and the true chachma, true wisdom will be, there'll be a lot of that. Shenemar, like it says, Kimala ha'aretz de'as Hashem, the world will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem. V'nemar v'lo yilmadu ish Yisrael ish es achiv. It says we will no longer teach one another because everyone will know it. And it says, the Torah tells us, Hashem says he's going to remove the heart of stone from our flesh. In other words, we will have true understanding of Hashem. And why is this? Because Mashiach, in this view, Mashiach, who's going to come from Beis David, he's going to be a Baal Chachma. He's going to be very wise, even wiser than Shlomo Melech. The Navi Gadol who carved Moshe Rabbeinu, and he will be a great prophet close to Moshe Rabbeinu. So what will Mashiach's role be in this view? It will be to teach us and to show us the way of the walking in the path of Hashem. And then all the nations will come to listen to him. Shenemar, as it says, will be at the end of days. Right? The Har Beis Hashem, the house of Hashem, will be established on the top of the hill. But the final reward and the very last sense of good, that will not have an end, and nothing diminished from it, is Chai Olam Haba. This is the world to come. Al Yemais Mashiach, hu ha'olam hazeh, v'ha'olam keminhagei halech. But Yemais Mashiach, that is this physical world as we know it. The world will go according to the laws of nature as we know it now. Ella shal malchus tachas Yisrael. It's just that the ruling government, the ruling kingdom as such, will be the Jewish people. Ukvar Amar Chachamim Harishanim, as our earlier Chachamim have told us, there's no difference between this world and Yemais Mashiach, except for the fact that we will no longer be under the other kingdoms. So, what have we seen here in short? I think perhaps that we'll do the sikum at the beginning of our next session, so we review what we did today. But in general, what we talked about is just very short. The idea that we have three ways to look at the purpose of the world. It's a philosophical approach. It's about knowing Hashem as much as possible. That's the purpose of mankind. The purpose of this world is for us to know Hashem. The purpose is for Hashem to be a king, or the purpose for Hashem to have a dwelling place here on earth. When we take the first view that we looked at tonight, if it's about knowing Hashem, then if that's the case, that everything in this world is just about human beings being able to use their brains as much as possible to learn about the world. Why? In order to know Hashem, right? We learn science, so we see the wonders of Hashem. We look at everything here to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, Yemais Mashiach is a time that we will be able to be free to learn as much as we can, because ultimately, Yemais Mashiach is not the end. The end game is Olam Haba. It's a time when we have a neshama and not a guf. And it's a time when the neshama, because it's not limited by the body, can fully understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So whatever we learn in this world, we do as much as we can, but ultimately the final completion of that avodah is in a world of neshamas. And therefore, even then Yemais Mashiach is not, again, it's not the final end, it's the means to that further end. It just means a time that we will be completely free and without have any other disturbances, so that we can just sit and learn, and Mashiach will be first and foremost our teacher and our Navi who will guide us and teach us.
Thank you so much, Sara. And thank you to everyone who's here. And thank you, Mary and Mishki, for reading. And
Thank you.
yeah, it's funny to learn something that's not our view, you know, like we know that this is our view. So it's like, you know, it's a good mind exercise. And just want to wish everyone we are not settling for anything less sweet than the Gula Mikdash Shlema, and we'll see you Mashiach for ourselves. We won't have to learn
Amen.
so we'll just experience it and just, you know, learning Einai Dimer Shmiel or whatever. So now we're just like hearing it, but let's just see it. And yeah, Mashiach now we should wait for next week. And in your time. So nice. Thanks, Levi and Mishka, for being on camera. And Sara. And
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good bench, Jill. Bye.
Everybody. So it's not next week, Rifki, not next week. Next week is Rosh Hashanah. 2 weeks. 2 weeks.